Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
One of our biggest challenges is when people hear non-alcoholic tequila or a non-alcoholic margarita, as we have in cans, they go, well, that's not for me because I'm not an alcoholic. And, you need to be able to tell that story of, well, actually, this is a product for people that do drink.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk.
Warning, this is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening and or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. We are living, if you are in, most of our audience is from in America. And right now is a great time to be entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurs see a need and meet a need. When I was coming up, in the area that we grew up in, we would have people who, we had certain families that would try to start businesses and stuff like that. And when we started businesses, we were like the guy who owned a laundromat or a barber shop or a sandwich shop or an ABC store, liquor store, or whatever, because those are the things that we saw around us all the time. So, so I ran into some money and I'm gonna open up a barbershop. Oh, I ran into some money, I'm gonna open. But the needs in the world, in the context of the world, are broadened, and we gotta start using our imagination on how we can service a market, what will give us a competitive advantage, and stop looking at ourselves as I'm a small business guy. I'm just starting out, making these little built-in excuses. When I started taking podcasting seriously, I'm just using this as an example. I started listening to other podcasts that already is there and looking at their artwork, looking at the way that they design or they put out their descriptions and everything, because I can't look at myself being in the same industry and say, oh, but I'm over here and they're over there. Right? In order to get there, you have to follow the footsteps of those that are already there, not looking at them and saying, oh, they're here. And it's difficult terrain for me to get there. Today, we're going to be talking to Milan. Did I say it right? You asked me my name. Milan. We're going to be talking to Milan and his journey as an entrepreneur and tap into some of his mind power. Because, we sit you at the feet of the masters and we have conversations that help you evolve into better you. Milan, how are you, sir?
Good, man. It's really, it's good to be here. Doing these things is fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get into what you're doing now with your Free Spirit company, tell our audience about yourself and your journey as much as you would like to share.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I grew up right outside Philadelphia, and it's kind of a provincial area. It's not, at the time, it wasn't really tapped into the global community. So it was a very kind of small view of the world. But through a series of events, I found myself working in the advertising world in New York at 90 miles north. And it opened up my world, man. I just working with people from around the world in a cosmopolitan place like New York. I got a bunch of global assignments outside the US, and it really just kind of turned me into who I am. It opens your eyes to both how similar humans are around the world and how different we are. Um, and working in a business like advertising, where this kind of thing called creativity is at the center of it. I observed over the years how to use this thing called creativity that, frankly, is too often kind of, I don't know, teed up as this kind of God-given gift that only a select few get, um, versus actually, you used a word just now, imagination, which is, you know, using creativity as a way of thinking about the world, as a way of solving problems, looking out into the world and seeing what problems and opportunities exist. And so I did 20 years in that business, man. I really drank it in. I loved it. It was a work hard, drink harder business. Um, and I ultimately kind of worked my way up into a position of running an agency. And yeah, man, I absolutely loved it. And at some point, I just kind of lost myself in the job and realized it was time for a reset. And about 5 years ago, I left the agency world, uh, took the skill set and the tools that they armed me with, and looked out into the world to kind of see kind of what the biggest kind of persistent problems were, and realized that alcohol abuse is a problem, and alcohol is the third leading cause of premature death globally. But most people, as the stats show, are like me, not people that necessarily have a chemical alcohol problem, but just more like, hey man, you're out and you and I are out having a couple cocktails. When your glass is empty, you keep ordering cocktails because it's enjoyable. And that happens 3 or 4 or 5 times, and all of a sudden, like, you can get yourself into trouble. And so, our whole premise was, well, gosh, what if everything that's great about a cocktail was great, but we gave people the ability to kind of drink as many cocktails as they want, but start to kind of decide how much, if any, alcohol they want to put in their bodies.
So, looking at that from the context of all of the years that you had in the industry, um, especially with the knowledge that you gained from the foreign market, do you think that when you stepped into this new idea that you had some type of competitive advantage, understanding the culture that's centered around, and we're talking about high industry levels, but then you can also look at the construction guy who gets off at night and he goes into the bar and they're hammering them back, and or and there's different levels to it. um how did you know that this market could be impacted and penetrated?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think, like so many entrepreneurs, for me, it started with a gut feeling. It started with intuition. It started with personal experience, but then was later validated by the market conditions. So for me,
Mm.
like I said, my personal experience was, yeah, every time I was overserved, to put it politely, it was a result of being out with friends or colleagues, having a great time, great conversation. You're drinking delicious cocktails, and you keep going because the notion of not drinking is almost like, well, not participating. um, and so, I think for me, the big question was, all right, well, if most people don't want to get drunk or have hangovers, why do they? And it's ultimately, kind of where I got to from a research perspective, is like, yeah, you know what, and I was a part of it, man. The alcohol business spends billions of dollars a year to convince you that to have a good time, to relax, to decompress, to celebrate, alcohol needs to be at the party. And I'm not anti-alcohol. My company's not anti-alcohol. I just believe that, it's much more nuanced than that. And people should be able to kind of have choice and still have really exciting, delicious adult cocktail beverages and cocktails, but also decide whether alcohol is a part of that or not. So ultimately, then to your question, it became very clear that people from all walks of life globally um, were moving towards moderation. Ours is not a company of abstinence. We don't sit here and
Yeah.
bang a gavel saying alcohol is bad for you, you shouldn't drink. It's more like, no, man, like,
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
go drink. But if you want to continue to drink good stuff and exciting stuff, now you've got the option of doing that, and you can kind of decide you can have all of that without any alcohol. And now with ours, you can also have it with some alcohol. You can just use our stuff to mix in to, make lower alcohol beverages, or every other one is an alcoholic beverage and non-alcoholic. So the market has grown significantly now. There's like $4 billion a year now spent on
Mhm.
no and low alcohol beverages. And, so like I said, it started with kind of a gut feeling, and then we validated it with the market research.
So much so that a lot of the beer industry are really taking their products and making low to no alcohol
For
beverages, and,
sure.
and pushing heavy towards it. It's kind of like when Coke and Pepsi got into this low sugar competition, and then everybody's just like, "Oh, we got a low sugar product too." It's like, but you were able to
That's
penetrate a part of the market, um,
yeah.
and and how important was your marketing background, and how did you employ it for your own personal product now?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that marketing, brand building, advertising, um, is the key to our success so far. Yes, there's the commercial pieces of it that we had to actually formulate a great product and put a supply chain in place and evolve the supply chain and get a distribution network. And there's all these things that you just don't have the muscle memory to do yet. But as an entrepreneur, you figure it out.
Mhm,
And then at some point, you get team members who are experts in those areas, and we've
mhm,
done that. But 100%, man, like the key for me is creativity, which is core to kind of, brand building, marketing, and advertising, was really my superpower of looking out at the world and saying, is there an opportunity for us to offer up, this crazy notion of non-alcoholic tequila, non-alcoholic bourbon, or as we now do, non-alcoholic cocktails, um, and you know, communicating with people in a way creatively and clearly enough to provoke people and to entice people into trying something they might not have tried before. I think one of our biggest challenges is when people hear non-alcoholic tequila or a non-alcoholic margarita, as we have in cans, they go, well, that's not for me because I'm not an alcoholic. And you need to be able to tell that story of, well, actually, this is not a product, for that community. This is a product for people that do drink. What if you've had a couple of cocktails and you want to keep drinking, but you don't want to get more drunk? What if
yeah.
you're pregnant? What if you're driving home? What if, and you start to tell those stories and people go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That's, that works for me.
Well, mindfully, I'm a mindful coach and a yoga instructor too. So mindfully, though, it's the movements, right? That that
Yeah.
um that come with it. It's like in the cigarette industry, they say it's not just smoking a cigarette; it's the lighting of the cigarette. It's the putting it to your mouth. It's the and the same thing.
So
Yeah, it's everything that comes along with it. But because this stuff happens so subconsciously that we don't even realize that that's a part of the addiction. It's not necessarily the alcohol. How many people drink now? Or somebody might be listening and having a drink that don't want to drink.
yeah,
My father-in-law is a licensed a union electrician here in New York was, and he said he had a guy on his job, and every day he said, "Today is my last day drinking. No more drinking for me." And at the end of the day, when he said, "I'm gonna start tomorrow,"
yep,
so
yeah,
this gives the alternative. It takes what they would refer to as the bite away. Um, that that tends to happen because it's that hanging out or going to the bar scene and all of that is part of the experience.
yeah. It's part of the human experience, man. Like you and I going out and having a cocktail together. It's such a ceremonial, human,
Hmm.
interactive kind of wonderful part of life, right? And I think that we've historically given alcohol the credit for making it wonderful,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
But at the end of the day, it's not, man. It's like the magic is there. Um, it's really just a matter of if you and I go out to like, the coolest new cocktail bar in Midtown and we're sitting there, we're like, ooh, look at this cocktail list and like all these ingredients from all over the world. And, they have these interesting names and served in beautiful glassware. And, it's mixed up by a mixologist who's wearing a funny hat and, has a, handlebar mustache. And we're like, wow, and then they go, yeah, it's $20 for a cocktail, which is a ridiculous thing when you think about what it is. It's 3 ounces of liquid, right? But most of us are like, yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. 15 bucks, 20 bucks. Yeah,
Yeah,
no problem.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And I think it's because of all that goodness. It's the experience. You're basically buying the experience of it. And then when you overdrink, it's just exactly as you were saying. It's the motion. It's the hand to mouth, hand to mouth, hand to mouth. You can go through a cocktail quickly, but if you do it mindfully, to your point, and go, you know what? I am going to have an alcoholic cocktail. Then I'm going to have a non-alcoholic cocktail,
mhm.
and then I'll decide whether I want another alcoholic one or not. But I just can't tell you how many times I've been in business and social situations where you know the drink hits your lips, and you kind of blink your eyes, and all of a sudden you're 5 or 6 drinks in,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
and you're just and it wasn't your intention. It was just kind of like you're on the ride.
yeah. Especially for this would be good for, well, Christmas is over now, but for those Christmas parties where some people got got to take the walk of shame back to work after the New Year.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like the bad behavior that I mean, I'll raise my hand and say there's a bunch of things over the course of my life that I look back, I'm like, ooh, that's a little rough.
Yeah,
That I wouldn't have made that decision, had I not, had too many drinks. And so I think, ultimately, this is a way of saying, nope, we get to have all the good,
yeah.
without all the baggage that used to come from it.
When you started to kick this idea around and you went home to your family, or you may have shared it with a couple of buddies, what were they? What was their reaction? They're like, what are you doing? Because you didn't come from a spirits industry.
Yeah. Yeah. I had no business doing it at the time. And not only did I not have any business doing it, but the category didn't exist. Like there was no playbook. Like if you want to start a company that makes bourbon, you know how to make bourbon, right? It's like it's very clear. The science is there. The infrastructure is there. All that stuff. Making non-alcoholic tequila, it just didn't exist really. Um, how do you make a product that historically has had alcohol in it? How do you replicate the burn and the bite of ethanol on your palate? How do you deliver those flavors that typically only come from sitting in, they're going through a fermentation process, a distillation process. How do you do all that? And then the other piece of it is because the category was so new. Man, I had a bunch of people look at me like I had five heads when I would say things like, "Hey, I'm starting a company. I'm walking away from this career in advertising, start a non-alcoholic bourbon company." And you know, even my wife, who's been wildly supportive the entire time, early days was like, "This is what we're betting the farm on. Like, you sure this is the thing?" And you're like, "Yeah, man. Like, I kind of feel it, and I can see it, and I can validate it. Doesn't mean it's going to be successful." At the time, I didn't know. At the time, in fact, I had no idea how risky of a venture it was. I always say, even to our early investors who've been with us for 5-6 years now, I'm like, God, like I had no idea how risky of a venture this was, and you took that risk. Like you put money in this thing, and now it's really off and running. Thank you for believing in the thing, because I wasn't being dishonest. I just had no idea how risky this thing was.
Now, in terms of distribution right now, where you are now, fast forward, your
Yep.
marketing background, I'm pretty sure it helped you to really carve your messaging and all of those things that is necessary for entrepreneur. But now you're carving out a new a new product, a new frontier.
Sure.
Um, Non-alcoholic tequila is what I mean. So, where were some of the first places that you looked in terms of distribution?
Yeah. So when we founded the thing, it was in the middle of the pandemic.
Okay.
So as a result, your channels were limited, right? Nobody was going out to bars and restaurants and things like that. So we really focused for the first year on the direct to consumer business, so selling on Amazon and our website. But then once the pandemic kind of moved on, and we also got kind of our feet under us relative to evolving the product, making the product better, putting the right kind of systems in place. We quickly expanded into ultimately the same distribution model that the alcoholic spirits employ. So state by state distribution within what they call the three-tiered system, and getting some great partners on board early days. Total Wine and More was one of our first customers. Hy-Vee was another one in the Midwest grocery store chain who believed in the category, believed in us. And all of a sudden, you blink your eyes and we're in 48 states,
Hmm.
and we're selling 60, 70,000 cases a year. Um, and but it's hard, man. It's like it's that whole, like, I ultimately had to punk myself into it, I think, because there's you get a lot of questions around, like, wow, what was it like to take the big leap? And it wasn't like that for me, man. It was just such small incremental steps that I kind of fooled myself into doing it, where it's like, it's just, I don't know, whatever that expression is, like, you don't have to be great to start, but you need to start to be great.
Yeah, yeah,
And it was just like, hey, I'm taking these teeny little baby steps, like walking into the ocean, and all of a sudden you look back and you're like, whoa, man, the shore is really far away,
yeah.
right?
Those micro movements, right?
Yeah.
You start. It starts in the mind, and this is the thing that everybody has to understand. It starts in the mind, then you start to put the ideas together. And I'm going to ask this question, and you can, uh, when you thought about it first, and you started
Yeah.
to say that I want to bring this baby to birth, was what you thought, what you saw, and the end product two total different things?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think that the vision for the product and the company is really nicely aligned to the original vision. How we got here, and that's wildly different. It was,
Okay. All right.
you know what I mean? Like, it's, I can't emphasize enough how perilous of a journey it is. And, like, not that they probably would have had me, but I couldn't have learned more if I got, advanced degrees from all the Ivy League schools. Like,
Mm,
what I've learned over the past, 5, 6 years is worth 100 times what any Harvard MBA,
Mm.
would have delivered. I think I have, and when I say I mean myself, but also now our team, we've earned our scars, man. Like we've taken some bruises, and we've learned the hard way of, what not to do, and we've had some harrowing near death experiences. But all of that said, it's put us into a place where we now, looking back and having that experience, are more capable than ever. And now we kind of go, hey, we've built the foundations of this thing. We've got a really nice business here. The category has grown dramatically, so it's nice to have a category at our back. Um, and now it's time to scale. And so now I can properly sit in front of investors and strategic, alcohol companies and say, we've de-risked the business. We've built this business. The foundations are strong. This foundation we've built can hold a skyscraper. Whereas right now, we've got a nice little condo sitting on that foundation, but it can hold something much bigger. So let's scale this thing.
Yeah, yeah. And now that you've found your level of success and you really can see the vision clear, like is putting this up. What's next? What are you looking to do in this industry as you become really like the grandfather? I know you're still a young man, but the senior voice of this industry that didn't have any blueprint, nothing. Again, now you've created this blueprint, you've created this thing. How is that transitioning you as an entrepreneur from 5 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think about, Free Spirits as a brand
Mm.
is meant to encapsulate this idea of those of us who kind of go our own way, go against the grain, don't follow convention,
That's
don't follow
that's the
industry, don't
marketing
follow
in
right.
you. That's the marketing in you.
Right? And like our tagline is "Drink like you mean it,"
Yeah.
because it comes from this sense of intentionality,
Mm.
right? Whereas too many of us have been drunk, and it's not that you meant to get drunk, or it's not that you wanted a hangover. It was just kind of like you went with the flow, like we were talking. So this notion of free spirits, of people who have, like, what, like when I was a kid in my 20s, if I decided that in any given night I wasn't going to drink alcohol, the friends group would be like, dude,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you? Come on, and you'd 9 times out of 10, you'd go, screw it. Okay, I'm drinking. But I think that the brand and the legacy that I hope to leave is one of, no, actually, you get to have all of the goodness that this world has to offer, because this world's rad, man. There's so much good stuff to experience and see and taste. Um, but historically, we've just accepted the fact that there's a price for too much drinking, right? And there
Mm.
is,
And
right?
it is, yes.
It's, it's not healthy. Um, this legacy should be, no, actually, you know what, I'm going to make my own decisions. I'm going to have some alcohol, I'm going to have no alcohol, I'm going to have cocktails, I'm going to, and so ultimately, what's next for us is scaling this business, amongst what we've built, potentially with some big strategic partnerships with bev alc companies who already have the global infrastructure,
Hmm. Hmm.
and ultimately building Free Spirits into a brand that people around the world know, love, and associate with this idea of having it all, doing it my way.
Now, when you partner with larger brands that already have their blueprint, their footprint, how much
Yep.
of yourself do you lose? How much of your brand identity do you lose, or
Yeah.
are you at the table saying no? We need to keep our spirit free.
Oh, it's an insightful question because, um, you know, historically, in so many businesses, it's the entrepreneurs who innovate, and then ultimately there's an acquisition by the big companies who don't innovate. They acquire,
Mm-hmm.
and then they take this great brand, they take this great product and this business and put it into their big distribution and sales network and marketing, resources, and the business scales. And so, what you give up there, and there's countless stories. Ben and Jerry's is a great one, right? When Ben and Jerry's sold to Unilever, they had all kinds of, things in place that were meant to protect the product and protect the brand. And it's been successful in some ways. And if you read the news, it's been unsuccessful in other ways. And there's lawsuits going on right now between, the original owners and Unilever. And so, yes, when you sell or when you partner, there is that risk of giving up. Like, and I'll give you an example. We are a brand that is not afraid of um, making waves. One of the most persistent comments that we get online from people that don't really get the point of non-alcoholic cocktails or spirits is that people say drinking non-alcoholic tequila is like hiring a hooker for a hug, right?
Sometimes you just need a
And
hug, though.
right, so we typically reply and say, something funny around those, like, hey, whatever you're into, buddy. um, but we actually went out last quarter in October of last year, and we hired a professional sex worker to go around the city giving people professional hugs. And we filmed it. It's on our website. You can see it. And it was one of the most wonderful, lovely things you experience. People are just like melted in her arms. And it was this really warm, wonderful, thing. And the point was, hey, you know, just because, uh, you know, there's not this kind of end game. It's not about the end game of, this thing in sex or this thing called drunk. It's like, no, the act of,
Emotion.
drinking a cocktail
Mhm.
is wonderful in and onto itself, just like a hug is. And so, I think that the reason I share that story is, if we were owned by a big corporation at this point, there's not a chance in hell they'd let us go out and hire a professional sex
No,
worker.
I don't think that they would. Um,
Yeah.
you started online. You've scaled up. You how much of the market base is still are you online, word of mouth promotions, like through podcasts, live reads, like I could do for you if you ever needed us.
Yeah. Love it.
How much of your you still do you still fight for that market, or are you wondering like, oh, we're past that?
No, man, it's still so early days. We get caught up in our own world sometimes, and you kind of have this implicit idea that, like, well, people know about the category, people that know us and whatever. And we're in the middle of January.
Mhm.
There's this thing called Dry
Dry
January.
January,
You've
yeah,
probably heard of
yeah.
it, right? And every year, tens of millions of new people hear about Dry January for the first time and try it. And it reminds me that our category is still so young,
Mm,
and that there's still so much more ahead of us. I think it's one of the reasons why we're very friendly with our competitors. We help them, they help us. It's a very familial, happy category. And I think it's largely because the opportunity is in front of us all.
yeah,
Whereas more mature categories, everybody's just fighting each other for
for
their
that,
customers,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. And knowing that the market is early, you're in it. Even though you have competitors, you don't have a whole lot of competitors. And
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, the bar to entry to start a beverage brand, it's not very high. If you want to start a beverage brand, you can. You got to, put some money into it. Got to, put the effort into it. And if you're willing to burn a couple $100,000 of your own money to do it, you can do it. The magic and the hardship is in staying alive
yeah,
and growing the business. So, if you look at the shelf, at, we're in Walmart, we're in Safeway, we're in, Benny's and Bevmo and Walgreens and Wegmans in New York now, and all of these places. If you look at the shelf, there's us and maybe 3 or 4 other brands. But if you look online, there's a lot of other
Yeah.
brands because people just kind of go, "Yeah, I'm going to start a beverage brand," and they open up a store and think that that's what there is, and you're like, "Gosh, in our experience, that's the starting line." Playing in the retail and the wholesale space, making sure that when somebody walks down an aisle with thousands of products, they look they look and see your product and they go, "That's
That's
mine.
my yeah.
That's the product that I want to buy." That's hard, man. That takes money, time, expertise, and more than anything else, the fortitude. It's the whole Rocky Balboa thing, man. It's like it's not how hard you can get punched. It's about how hard you can get punched and get up.
Yeah. I was joking around the other day because they call Rocky Balboa champ. As if I know to me that is just like he was never a champ. In the movie he was a champion, but he goes around and refers to himself as champ.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, I grew up in South Jersey, which is a suburb of Philly, and
Mm,
so it's the whole Philly scene embraces Rocky as their own. In fact, I was watching a Warriors game the other night, and they were in last night, and they were in Minnesota, and
great game.
I heard over. Yeah. It ended up in our favor, and but they were playing the Rocky theme, in Minneapolis, and I remember being offended by it. I'm like, you can't play Rocky in Minneapolis. Get out of here.
If we could call Sylvester Stallone champ, we could play Rocky.
I guess that's fair enough.
Thank you so much, man. My last question for you: what books have influenced you, impact you? It could be fiction and nonfiction. It doesn't have to be something that you write recently. Just if you was just giving out ideas of books to read.
Oh yeah, dude, my absolute the book that has impacted my journey the most so far is a book called "The Obstacle Is
It's
the
the way.
Way."
Yes, yes, yes. I listened to
Right?
that
I
book.
mean,
Yeah,
it's Ryan Holiday, great guy. He's got that one, and then the ego is the enemy. And I just think ultimately it just kind of opened my eyes to kind of the philosophy of Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius and all of the sitting there kind of going like he's running the empire and his wife's cheating on him and his second in command's about to plot his death and all of these things, and in my own weird small little way I can identify. You're like, you sit here in this entrepreneurial journey, you're like, well, that's screwed up and that's screwed up and that's bad and that's bad and that's bad, but you need to be able to kind of rise above it and go, okay, all good. Let's do something wonderful today. Let's make some magic, despite all that. So I think that kind of really embracing the fact that everything that happens that you would traditionally think is bad, you got to look at and say, all right, well, that's going to direct me to exactly where I want to go. I might not know, where. It's like I said earlier in the conversation, I know where we want this thing to go, and I'm driving us to there. The how we get there,
Hmm.
large degree, has been way out of my control.
Yeah,
Sometimes you just got to go, hey, we didn't get that deal. I'm crushed. But if it happens enough times, you just kind of need to embrace the fact that that wasn't the deal.
yeah,
That wasn't the deal that was going to get us there.
yeah. And it's funny that you would say that you never know when that call is going to happen or when the email is going to come or
100%.
um right now people I've interviewed 2 or 3 years ago are circling back around and saying, hey, I'm just checking in to see what you're up to, and like I got this idea and I remember that you said you did this and I want to see how we can work together. You just never know, man. And
Dude, I got a little sticky note on my desk that I've had for years that says something amazing is going to happen today. And every time I open up my emails or every time the phone rings, I expect
something to make.
that something rad is going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. What a wonderful way to do. Now, who would have thought that when you look at being birthed during COVID, you didn't become a coach. Thank God you. Everybody became a coach during COVID. You started a free spirits.
Yeah, totally.
And but but something that was negative, it gave you enough time to sit within your thoughts and to build. And I really applaud the fact that you are tapping into this market and giving people a way to have their cocktails in a responsible way. Because the hardest part of
Yeah.
not drinking, especially if you like to drink, is that you miss the taste, you miss the feel, you miss. So now a person can be in an environment, still have the feeling, but not necessarily have the spiral out. Because we're talking about drinking responsibly, but we do know that in our country right now, somebody's irresponsibly drinking, jumping behind a
Yeah.
wheel, and doing some things that we always say, oh man. And regardless of how much we say it, we know that alcohol is one of the number one uh, drug that, as you say, um, uh,
You have to rationalize why you don't drink it
yeah,
or you don't use that drug. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So I thank you for that. Listen, everyone, we don't ask you for Cash Apps, Venmos, uh, Zells, or Apple Pays or anything like that. We lead with value. We want to bring you conversations so that you can evolve through our conversations for the better. You've heard the story. If you're on the fence and you want to get started, just take the step. It's not a quantum leap, it's many steps. But then when you look back, you're like, wow, look at how far I got ahead. And that's why it's called the Victory Walk. Milan is now a part of Walk in Victory family. All of his information, the website is there. You're having that party coming up, and you know you have some friends that want non-alcoholic beverages. Be the one in the party to say, hey, man, not only do I have non-alcoholic beer, but I got non-alcoholic tequila, so that they can partake in the shots and all of the things that usually happens when people be on the sideline moping because they can't drink because they're the designated driver. Um, there's an answer for that now. So don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Your subscriptions, your likes is your currency to us. It helps us to get to the algorithms and have other people listen to our show. Lastly, if you're listening on a platform where you can leave a comment, do so, 5-star review, and talk about this particular episode. And again, go to Milan's website, Free Spirit website, and order your mocktails right now. Peace.